I'm Brian Scordato, and this is the Idea to Startup podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. We accelerate ideas into real companies through the Tacklebox membership, and we think through startup strategy every Wednesday on the Idea to Startup podcast. You're here because you're thinking about an idea, or you're ready to launch something, or you already launched something and you're running full steam ahead. We're here to help with the counterintuitive stuff. On to it. Today, we're going to try something new. It is an episode type I'm calling 3 Things. These are 3 things that have been coming up a ton with our members at Tacklebox. The stuff they're stuck on, and the stuff that's helping them get momentum. The original idea for a 3 Things pod came from our pod consultants, who said the current pods take me too long to write. This was supposed to be a way to get them out quicker. They suggested that I just rattle through 3 ideas off the top of my head and move on. Instead, I spent like 3 times as long as a normal pod agonizing over which 3 things were good enough to deserve a spot. Then I spent so much time on each that we had to break it up into 3 episodes. So, the complete opposite of what the consultants wanted. I guess that'll show them for trying to teach a middle-aged dog new tricks. Anyway, if you like the show and don't already subscribe, please do that. If you love the show and haven't given us a 5-star review yet, please do that. And without further ado, let's get to the first of the 3 things. A framework for sprinting. And to do that, we've got to start by talking about Reliance and kangaroos. There's an interesting phenomenon that's happened over the past 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 years. I'm not sure exactly how many. But humans have become less and less dependent on each other. And now, today, we've reached the point where any human contact at all is a choice. You could, and lots of people do, sit in your apartment as a freelance developer or PR consultant or countless other jobs that require no human interaction and make enough money to support yourself. With that money, you can order your groceries and a Vitamix and a slow cooker and make shakes for breakfast and chili for dinner and order Thai on Thursdays and watch Interstellar every Friday, desperately trying to figure out why everyone thought it was good. Today, you don't need anybody. The point of any business is to find friction and remove it, so I guess this was inevitable. But that doesn't mean it's good. Self-reliance seems like a good thing, but in the case we're going to talk about today, and a lot of other cases, most cases, it isn't. It's just not how humans were meant to live. Relying on each other is our evolutionary superpower. It's a good thing. It's not a hassle. It's freeing. I remember going to my grandparents' house on Sundays growing up, and the delicious pasta dinner my northern Italian grandmother cooked would feature tomatoes from one neighbor, olive oil from another, and greens from a third. Dinner relied on them, and we talked about how great their tomatoes and their olive oil was. Centuries before that, obviously, everyone's survival depended on the health of the community. Being a part of your community was never optional. Now it is. Being reliant on people was never optional. Now it is. This is all going to come back around to sprints in your startup idea, I promise. Back in 2017, I had an idea for a habit tracking startup with a friend named Trevor. He's a full-stack developer, a brilliant strategic mind, and a hell of a guy to get lunch with in New York City. I used to play a game with myself that he had no idea he was a part of, where I'd point out random hole-in-the-wall restaurants as we walked through downtown and say, "Ever eaten there?" And he'd reply matter-of-factly that, yes, of course he'd eaten at that Afghan restaurant with 2 tables and a half-broken AC dangling out of the window, and that they had, quote, really good mantu. Some of the best mantu around, actually, unless you were going to go uptown, of course. In nearly every way, he's the flip of the coin for me, a great person to rely on. We both also really enjoy the habit stuff and have been looking for a project to work on together. So we started hacking away on the side on a business called Habit Kangaroo. The high-level idea was that it takes 30 days of consistent work to create a new habit. If you want to start, say, exercising before work, once you've done it 30 days in a row, your brain will pass that from an active decision to a passive one. It's now equivalent to brushing your teeth or eating breakfast, something you do unless there's a reason not to. The big goal was to become the mastermind of habits, a place with a bunch of specific tailored 30-day programs to help you add habits and transfer them from active to passive. We did a bunch of market research on the habits people most wanted to build but struggled to stick to, and whittled it down to a few with the best, most obvious feedback loops. Quick note on feedback loops because we're here. A massive part of any business is making the success of your first customers wildly obvious. That is the only way you're going to grow. If that success is somehow public or easily shareable, even better. This feels like a no-brainer part of the ideation step, but tons of founders miss it or ignore it or don't know about it. And it's generally a good indicator of an iterative startup idea. If there isn't a massive Weight Watchers esque before and after picture you can paint for your very first customers, if it isn't blindingly obvious to your customers and their friends that your thing actually worked, your value is iterative, not substantial. And people don't buy iterative products. So you need a new customer or a new idea. The before and after picture is how your business will grow, so the difference better be stark. For Habit Kangaroo, this narrowed our choice down to people looking to build a personal finance habit or an exercise habit. And we ended up choosing finance because of the obvious value we could provide and the lack of competition. Once we helped a customer start using tools to find and cancel unnecessary subscriptions, negotiate monthly fees with vendors, and implement a tool like You Need a Budget to start creating spending limits and create some transparency, the before and after picture became stark. It was obvious. And we built the product around that moment, the before and after. We could show easily that this was how much they spent 2 months ago versus this month, or this is how much we were able to pay down their loans. We were planning on making shareable cards, mementos, to show this before and after off. The actual habit we helped them build was monthly budgeting, but the feedback loop was that initial before and after, and we could show that immediately, possibly even on day 2. We also thought budgeting would be a better initial bet than exercise because budgeting is theoretically easier than exercise. Exercising for 30 days straight requires a ton of effort and willpower. Our finance habit would only require a few clicks a day. Or so we thought. Unfortunately, we dramatically underestimated how emotional finances are and how difficult it actually is for people to look under their financial hood. But that is for another pod. Once we'd validated channels to acquire our first customers, a combination of newsletter advertising and SEO worked well for the automated part of acquisition, and going through alumni groups and offering discounts to college alumni a few years out of school worked for our manual cold emailing acquisition, Trevor and I split the building of the business into 2 parts. First was the content, what was actually going to be in the daily emails. Second was the product, how those emails were sent, how money was collected, managing of accounts and passwords, and so on. I handled content, Trevor handled product. We both worked asynchronously on our parts when we had time, mornings or evenings after our other jobs. We agreed to get in at least an hour a day each. And it all went fine. We made slow progress in weeks and then a month or 2 went by. But there wasn't really any momentum because momentum comes from closing feedback loops, and we weren't closing any. We were just kind of hacking away at an endless to-do list. That's not fun, so it wasn't urgent and it didn't become a priority. We both felt this lack of urgency, so Trevor suggested a weekend sprint. We'd get a room at a WeWork for Saturday and Sunday, show up at 6 a.m. each day, and work as late as we could. To add urgency and structure, we sent out an email to the first people who'd signed up to be notified when we released the financial habit. We said it'd be ready the first of the following month, and maybe 7 or 8 people, I forget, paid us $199 for it. Our marketing said we'd save you that money by day 10. We said we'd pick the first of the month to make it clean for our customers' finances, but really it just bought us an extra 15 days to get the product finished. Then we went to WeWork. We sat and cranked for 15 hours Saturday and 15 hours Sunday. We ate Afghan food and we got stuck on stuff and worked through it and we laughed a lot. We got more done in those 2 days than in the previous 2 months. We built a ton of momentum and the product was ready for launch. How it all went is a different pod, but the point is the sprint. Nearly all of the founders we work with at Tacklebox have full-time jobs and are working on an idea on the side. They've all got other stuff going on too. Kids, dogs, family responsibilities, whatever. For this reason, we built Tacklebox around these 1 to 3 hour blocks of time, the consistent crevices you can create in your life. But introducing a sprint into that cadence, the occasional, call it quarterly, weekend, or 3-day block where you can put in 25, 35, 45 consistent, focused hours, that is an absolute game changer. You can't do this all that frequently, and you can't do it willy-nilly. If you don't structure it, it'll fall apart. To help, we've come up with a 4-part structure for a great sprint: goal, prep, hook, and reliance. We'll go through the 4-part structure of a great sprint after a little smooth jazz. I opened up 2 sessions of the Let's Actually Run Customer Interviews workshop. It's a 10-day workshop with 3 live on Zoom group sessions plus one 30-minute individual coaching session with me. These sell out fast. We just opened them up for August and September. This is a momentum workshop. After 10 days, your idea will feel real. Sprint structure. The 4-part structure of a great sprint includes goal, prep, hook, and reliance. We will start with the goal. The goal part of a sprint is straightforward but hard. It's unlikely you've ever done a 35-hour 2-day sprint before, so picking what you can get done in that amount of time is tricky. It's also a great way to set yourself up for failure. If you say you're going to write 10 pieces of content and get a landing page built and set up SEO and send 50 cold emails, and you only get those 5 pieces of content written in a weekend, you're going to be upset. You also won't feel a ton of momentum. And the point of sprints is the opposite. We want to optimize for fun and momentum. So we start with that prompt. What will create an enormous amount of momentum at the end of the weekend if we accomplish it? So the first rule for sprints is that the sprint should not be used for what I term as maintenance. Do not set up a sprint to get a bunch of stuff that's been floating around your head done. If you've got a ton of emails to respond to or want to get ahead on content or catch up on whatever, this is not a great use of that time. A sprint should be used for stuff that you cannot do without there being a sprint. What is going to take you a few hours just to get going before you're really cooking on it? What is a hard thing that'll help you take a real swing on this business? A sprint weekend shouldn't feel like a given, and the unlikely part shouldn't be whether you can physically write 50 emails in 35 hours. It should be whether you can pull something ambitious off. Can you figure out a way to get a full product live? It should be a big helping of strategy alongside the horsepower. The goal should be singular and customer facing, and it should have a natural scoreboard. Customers should be able to use it, and you should be able to get feedback from it. It should be obvious when it's done. At the end of a sprint is a launch. If you're having trouble coming up with a goal, revisit our old friend Graham Weaver's talk at Harvard. I'll put it in the show notes. Grab a piece of paper and write out, long form, the story of your successful business 5 years from now. Tell the best case scenario, where you'd be thrilled to end up. Then tell the story of the first version of that product. Write it out long form, how it came to be, how you tested it, what's the first thing that you got in customers' hands. Then make that the goal. Rule 2, prep. There are 2 types of prep a good sprint needs: work prep and life prep. We'll start with work prep. When I asked our Tacklebox members how their working sessions go, the ones they do before or after their real job, a huge problem is prep. They'll hold an hour, say 6 to 7 a.m. before the rest of the house wakes up. They'll get up at 5:45 and make some coffee. They'll put it in their get shit done mug. They'll throw on their headphones. They'll sit down at 5:59 and they will not know what to do. So they'll reflexively start answering emails or checking LinkedIn. Then suddenly it's 6:27 and nothing's happened and they go let the dog out. Every time you sit down to work, you should have a plan that was made at the end of your previous working sessions so that you can jump right into the most important thing you got to be doing. For sprints, this is 10 times more important. Take the goal you've chosen and break it into projects and tasks that need to get done. Have a full, scripted weekend game plan. Trevor and I showed up with a stack of Post-its with tasks on them pre-made. We put them on the wall as step 1, and then we started. We moved each Post-it over as we finished them. It was clear what was next. I don't think I checked my email once. The other important part of work prep is location. You can theoretically do a sprint from the same place you do non-sprints, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's a cousin of the old saying, you can't heal in the same place you got sick. This whole thing should feel different, like an event. Rent out a conference room or ask your local coffee shop if you can use the back, or go to the library or your parents' basement or something. If you're doing this with a group, get an Airbnb for the day. Prepare yourself for a different 35 hours. Environment matters. The second part of prep is possibly more important than the first: life prep. You need to be ready to take 35 hours off from the rest of your life. If you got kids, arrange with someone, your spouse, your parents, whoever, to take them. Over-invest here until you feel confident. If you've got 3 kids under 5 and you're leaving them with your husband who might need some support, get a sitter to help out in the afternoons. Half-assing the sprint is a disaster. You need to be focused, so you need life prep. Rule number 3 is the hook. A sprint needs urgency, and that is where the hook comes in. Our hook at Habit Kangaroo was that customers had already paid us for a thing that we'd promised that we were going to make and give to them in 15 days. A huge part of a sprint, as you'll see more of in rule number 4, is happiness. The goal of a sprint is to get a big chunk of work done, but it is also to get you back excited about your idea. Happy you're doing it. The happiness equation is simple. It's just expectations minus reality. When reality exceeds your expectations, you're happy. When it doesn't, you're not. Or, put differently, you're happy when you surprise yourself, when you do something you weren't sure you could. If your hook is that you'll get something built that customers can use, even if it's a concierge MVP that you are doing the majority of the Wizard of Oz work for, that is great. To ensure you actually do it, get customers to pay you first. We've done sprints where people said they really wanted to get something done, and that was the hook. Not surprisingly, they get 60 or 70% of the way there, and then the weekend's over, and then they just leave, which is a disaster for sprints. We need to finish something to get momentum. If you're early on and can't have the hook come from customers, meaning it's too early for them to pay or the goal isn't something that can be paid for, find another way to create a hook. Here are 3 suggestions. If you're into the public commitment thing, post on LinkedIn or wherever that you'll have X done by the end of the weekend. Then post a video walkthrough at the end. If you're interested in raising funding at some point, schedule a demo of what you'll finish with a handful of investors for the following week. Maybe these are warm connections, but the meetings need to be on the calendar. Or maybe you buy and schedule a call with a mentor from one of those super expensive mentor call things like intro.com. The hook needs to make it impossible for you to back out. And finally, rule number 4, reliance. Habit Kangaroo didn't work. There are a bunch of reasons why, and again, maybe that's worth its own pod. But the sprint definitely worked. We shipped a really good first product at the end of it. And you know what I remember most from that sprint that ended up with the product? Trevor popping off his headphones, motioning for me to take off mine, and saying something like, "Infrastructure for the onboarding emails is all set. You can start popping in content. They'll send every other day, and A/B testing is set up to try upselling the personal finance coach." Then I'd smile, give him a hell yeah. We'd do the Jim and Pam air high five thing, then I'd start putting in the content. I relied on him, he relied on me. This year, 90% of our Tacklebox members are solo founders. In 2017, 10% of our Tacklebox members were solo founders. YC just released their Request for Startups, a comically transparent list of companies that benefit their model, not companies the world needs or should be aspiring to build, although I guess that's obviously what it should be. They're trying to make money. One thing on their list is the first 10-person, $100 billion company. This is extreme, but nearly everything I see out is about how AI and other tools are so good now that you don't need other people. You can build a company and get it funded and make billions of dollars, and guess what? You can keep it all. You don't have to give anyone else any of it. You don't need to rely on anyone. The problem with this is that that's not the point of any of it, or at least in my opinion, it's not. I remember the sprint, and I remember Habit Kangaroo because of Trevor. I enjoy Tacklebox because of the members, of course, but the time working through the product with Tamara is what I'll probably think back on in 15 years. I'm not saying you should search for a co-founder. I am saying that, like community, it's becoming a choice rather than a necessity. Co-founders create friction because there's no perfect co-founder. AI has removed that friction, so you don't have to figure out how to work with someone. But that also removes the air high five, the fun, and the fact that you'll likely build a better product with someone than without them. If you're a solo founder, get a friend to come with you for your sprint weekend. Pay them or buy them lunch and dinner or give them a tiny bit of equity to do a quarterly sprint with you. Or find a few other solo founders to run a sprint with in tandem in the same place. Present to each other at lunch and dinner. It won't give you the same value that relying on someone will, but it's better than nothing. You don't need to rely on anyone, but you can choose to, and it's probably more fun that way. To recap, a successful sprint needs a clear goal, work and home prep, a hook you can't back out of, and someone you'll rely on. Nail all 4, and you'll get some magic. I've spent the past decade working with idea stage founders with jobs, trying to help them become successful founders without those jobs. I spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out why some make the leap and others don't. There's tons of stuff on the idea and the background and the timing and luck and on and on and on, but there's also a consistent variable for the successful ones. They're happiest. They enjoy the process. And I haven't seen anything boost happiness like a full weekend sprint set up and run properly. Something that creates the momentum and happiness that can only come from closing loops, from shipping things. Obviously, again, this cannot be an every weekend thing or it loses its magic very fast. Once a quarter, it stays magical. So try one out. And if you're interested in doing it with some people, email team@gettacklebox.com. If people email, maybe we'll set something up. Next week, we'll talk through number 2 on our list of 3, the to-do list monster. And if you are on 9th Avenue, Ariana Afghan kebab is fantastic. Trevor was right. This was the Idea to Startup podcast, brought to you by Tacklebox. If you've got a startup idea and a full-time job, head to gettacklebox.com and check us out. Have a great week.